The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers stretched high above Ambassador Hyunwoo's head. He stood at the small human podium, looking up at the hundreds of alien delegates who would decide Earth's fate. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded as he prepared to make humanity's final plea. Honored members of the Council, Hyunwoo began, his voice echoing in the vast space. Humanity has served this body faithfully for 12 years. We have followed every law, paid every tax, and contributed to galactic peace. The Vorthak delegate, a massive creature with 6 arms and glowing red eyes, leaned forward on his golden throne. Ambassador Hyunwoo, the alien's voice boomed through translation devices. Your species has also started 3 trade wars, colonized restricted worlds, and your military vessels have been involved in 12 separate incidents. High above in the observation deck, Dayun pressed her face against the glass barrier. As Earth's top military strategist, she had helped prepare Hyunwoo's speech, but watching the alien faces below, she could see they had already made their decision. The deck was full of human diplomats, scientists, and reporters. All of them watched in growing horror as their worst fears came true. Those incidents were misunderstandings. Hyunwoo replied calmly. Our species is young. We are still learning galactic customs. Given time and guidance, we can become better citizens. A delegate from the Zephyrian Empire stood up. Her blue skin shimmered under the chamber's lights. The problem is not your mistakes, human. The problem is your nature. Your species is too aggressive, too quick to violence. You expand too fast and ask questions later. More alien voices joined in. The Crystalline Collective accused humans of being chaotic and unpredictable. The Hive Federation claimed humans were individualistic to a dangerous degree. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy listed humanity's crimes against galactic order. Hyunwoo listened to each accusation. He had prepared answers for all of them. Humans were aggressive because they had to survive on a dangerous world. They expanded quickly because their home planet was overcrowded. They were individualistic because it drove innovation and progress. But as he looked around the chamber, Hyunwoo realized none of his arguments would matter. The aliens had not gathered to hear humanity's defense. They had gathered to carry out a sentence already decided in private meetings. Meanwhile, 300 light-years away, Kite stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Sol. The vessel hung in space above a beautiful blue-green planet that his team had discovered just last week. The world had vast oceans, rich mineral deposits, and perfect conditions for human life. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Kite nodded. Put it through. The main screen flickered and suddenly the Galactic Council chambers appeared. Kitai could see Hyunwoo standing alone at the human podium, surrounded by hundreds of hostile alien faces. Back in the chamber, the Vorthak delegate was reading from a formal document. After careful consideration, this council has determined that the human species poses a clear threat to galactic stability and peace. Dayun felt her stomach drop. Around her, other humans were crying or shouting in anger. She forced herself to stay calm and listen to every word. Therefore, the Vorthak continued. The Galactic Council hereby revokes Earth's membership and orders immediate exile from galactic society. The chamber erupted in alien cheers and human protests. Hyunwoo stood perfectly still, his diplomat training keeping him composed even as his world collapsed around him. The Vorthak raised one of his massive arms for silence. The terms of exile are as follows. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 30 standard days. All human vessels must return to Earth space. All trade agreements with human worlds are hereby cancelled. The Sol system will be quarantined indefinitely. You cannot do this, Hyunwoo said, finally breaking his silence. Humanity has rights under galactic law. Humanity has no rights, the Vorthak replied coldly. You are no longer members of this council. You are exiles. On the observation deck, Daon watched as security guards began moving toward the human delegation. She could see alien news crews recording everything. This moment would be broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other species. Aboard the New Sol, Kite stared at the screen in shock. His crew of 200 men and women were all watching the transmission with growing anger and fear. Sir, his first officer asked quietly, what are your orders? Kite looked around his bridge. These people had volunteered for a 5-year exploration mission. They had families back on Earth and lives they planned to return to. But returning to Earth now meant accepting exile and imprisonment in their own solar system. "We have a choice," Kite announced to his crew. "We can return to Earth and accept this exile, or we can stay out here and make our own way." In the council chambers, Hyunwoo was making one final attempt. "Please reconsider. Humanity can change. We can learn. We can become the peaceful citizens you want us to be." The Vorthak delegate laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Humans cannot change their nature. You are what you are, warriors and conquerors who will never be satisfied with peace." "Then you do not know us as well as you think," Hyunwoo replied quietly. The vote was quick and unanimous. Every council member voted to exile humanity. Even the few species that had remained neutral chose to support the majority rather than risk their own standing. As the formal announcement was made, Da-un began planning. If the galaxy wanted to see humanity as warriors and conquerors, perhaps it was time to show them what human warriors could really accomplish when pushed to their limits. Kite made his decision. The new soul would not return to Earth. Instead, they would establish humanity's first secret colony on the world below. They would survive, grow strong, and prove that exile would not break the human spirit. Hyunwoo gathered his papers and walked calmly from the podium. He had failed as a diplomat, but perhaps failure was exactly what humanity needed. Sometimes a species had to lose everything before it could discover what it was truly capable of becoming. The great doors of the council chambers closed behind the human delegation. Outside, their ships waited to carry them back to Earth with news of humanity's exile. But unknown to the council, the seeds of humanity's future empire had already been planted in the darkness between the stars. 5 years had passed since the exile decree, and Earth felt like a prison to those who remembered the stars. The blue planet hung alone in space, cut off from the galaxy that had rejected it. But Subin knew better than most that appearances could be deceiving. She sat in her small apartment in Seoul, looking perfectly ordinary to anyone who might be watching. The former council liaison appeared to be just another citizen trying to make the best of humanity's isolation. But the quantum communicator hidden in her coffee table told a different story. "Ghostbase 7 reporting," came the encrypted voice through her earpiece. "Colony established successfully. Population now at 400. Subin smiled and made a note in what looked like a simple diary. To anyone reading it, she was just writing about her day. But the code hidden in her words would tell other operatives that another secret human settlement had taken root among the stars. The exile had been meant to contain humanity within the Sol system. The council believed they had successfully cut off all human expansion and forced the troublesome species back to their home world. They were wrong. When the 30-day deadline had arrived, most humans had indeed returned to Earth. 47 colonies had been officially abandoned, and 12 major space stations had been shut down. The Council's monitoring systems showed human space traffic dropping to nearly zero. Mission accomplished, or so they thought. What the Council did not know was that almost 30,000 humans had simply vanished. Some, like Kite and his crew, had chosen to stay in deep space rather than accept exile. Others had used false identities to blend into alien populations across the galaxy. And still others had gone completely underground, establishing hidden bases in places the Council would never think to look. Wu Jin was one of those who had disappeared. The former colony administrator now stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, a massive hidden base built inside a hollow asteroid in the Kepler sector. The asteroid looked completely natural from the outside, but inside it housed 15,000 humans and the most advanced technology Earth had ever produced. "The new stealth ships are ready for testing," reported his chief engineer. "The quantum fold drives are operating at 96% efficiency." Wu Jin nodded, watching through the transparent aluminum windows as sleek black vessels moved silently through space. These ships bore no resemblance to the clunky human designs the Council remembered. Born from necessity and desperation, they could slip past any known detection system. The secret to human survival had been adaptation. Cut off from official supply lines and trade routes, human engineers had been forced to innovate. They developed self-repairing hulls, fusion reactors that could run for decades without maintenance, and hydroponic systems that could feed entire populations from a few seed packages. But perhaps more importantly, they had learned to think like exiles. Ye-Jin adjusted her artificial gills and checked her appearance in the mirror of her underwater apartment on Aquatica Prime. To her neighbors, she was just another cetacean immigrant trying to make a living in the ocean cities of the water world. Her bluish skin modification and enhanced lung capacity marked her as a typical deep space colonist seeking a new home. None of them suspected that she was human. The silent network had been her idea. Humans who could pass for other species either through surgery, genetic modification, or simply careful disguise, had infiltrated dozens of worlds across Council space. They worked as traders, technicians, researchers, and even low-level government officials. They gathered information. They watched Council military movements. They identified resources and opportunities. And most importantly, they slowly began to influence the alien societies around them. The Tyrellian government is considering new mining rights in the Outer Rim, Ye-Jin reported during her weekly coded transmission. If we can guide them toward the Kepler sector, it might give our people legitimate cover for expansion. The network was growing. Every month, more humans found ways to slip past Council monitoring and join the secret diaspora. Some were refugees fleeing Earth's overcrowded conditions. Others were volunteers on specific missions. All of them shared the same goal: to prove that humanity could not be contained. Back on Haven Station, Wu-Jin reviewed the latest reports from across human space. The numbers were staggering. What had started as a few thousand exiles had grown into a hidden civilization, spanning over 200 star systems. Ghost colonies thrived on worlds the Council had written off as worthless. Humans had learned to live in asteroid belts, gas giant atmospheres, and even the cold void between stars. Every environment that other species found impossible had become another human home. The quantum communication network kept them all connected. Messages that would take years to travel by normal means could now be transmitted instantly across the galaxy. The scattered human populations were no longer isolated communities. They were a single, coordinated civilization that just happened to be invisible. Subin's latest intelligence report, his communications officer announced, handing Wu-Jin a datapad. As he read, Wu-Jin's expression grew serious. According to agents in Council space, several member species were beginning to question the exile decision. The economic disruption caused by cutting off human trade was more severe than expected. Some worlds that had depended on human agricultural technology were experiencing food shortages. More interesting was the growing concern about external threats. The Council's military had grown complacent during the long peace. Their weapons and tactics had not advanced significantly in decades. Some security experts were quietly wondering if exiling humanity's innovative military minds had been wise. Meanwhile, on a dead world at the edge of known space, Da-Un watched her newest recruits practice zero-gravity combat maneuvers. The planet had no name and no resources that interested the Council. But its hidden underground facilities housed the most advanced military training program humanity had ever developed. "Remember," she called out to the floating soldiers, "we're not training to fight the same wars as before. We're preparing for conflicts the Council can't even imagine." Her students came from across the hidden human diaspora. Some were former Earth military who had chosen exile over surrender. Others were colonists who had learned to fight for survival in hostile environments. All of them were united by the knowledge that humanity's peaceful days were over. The exile had changed humanity in ways the Council could never have predicted. Cut off from galactic civilization, humans had been forced to become self-reliant in ways that would have been impossible under Council oversight. They had developed technologies the Council would have banned as too dangerous. They had established communities in environments the Council considered uninhabitable. Most importantly, they had learned to work together without the bureaucratic restrictions that had hampered them as Council members. Subin closed her diary and prepared for another ordinary day on Earth. To any observer, she was just a retired diplomat trying to adjust to humanity's reduced circumstances. But in reality, she was one of the coordinators of the largest covert operation in galactic history. The Council had exiled humanity to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic order. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous. A human civilization that operated outside all rules, answered to no authority, and owed nothing to anyone but themselves. In 5 years, the scattered seeds had taken root and grown strong in the darkness. Soon it would be time for them to reach toward the light. 15 years after the exile, Taeho stood in the command center of Shadowheart, humanity's greatest secret. The massive facility had been carved into the core of a rogue planet that drifted through empty space between star systems. No council ship had ever detected it, and none ever would. Population report, Taeho requested from his aide. Current human population across all hidden territories now exceeds 12 million, came the reply. We have established permanent settlements in 347 systems. Taeho nodded, but his expression remained serious. Numbers meant nothing if they could not protect what they had built. The underground empire had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible, but growth brought new challenges. What about the defense network? Fully operational. We have early warning stations monitoring all major space lanes. Any council fleet movement larger than a patrol group will be detected at least 2 weeks before it could reach any of our territories. The Terran Shadow Collective, as they now called themselves, had become something the galaxy had never seen before. It was an empire without borders, a civilization without a homeworld, a government that ruled through consensus rather than force. And at its heart was the simple principle that had kept them alive. Never again would humanity be at the mercy of others. Min Seo wiped sweat from her forehead as she stepped out of the genetics laboratory on New Horizon. The world had once been a frozen wasteland that no species could survive on. Now it bloomed with specially designed plants that thrived in sub-zero temperatures, and humans who had been genetically adapted to call the ice planet home. The latest batch of adaptations is ready for testing, she reported to the research team. Enhanced metabolism for high-gravity worlds, improved radiation resistance for asteroid mining, and expanded lung capacity for thin-atmosphere planets. The breakthrough had come 7 years ago, when Min Seo realized that instead of trying to make worlds suitable for humans, they could make humans suitable for any world. The genetic modifications were completely voluntary, but thousands of colonists had chosen to permanently adapt themselves to extreme environments. Now humans lived in places that would kill any other known species. They thrived in the crushing gravity of super-Earths, the radiation-soaked asteroid belts around young stars, and the methane storms of gas-giant atmospheres. Every environment that the Council considered impossible had become another human home. The psychological effect was even more important than the practical one. Humans no longer saw any world as truly hostile. If it existed, they could find a way to live there. Jae-min stood at the edge of the Great Canyon on Resurrection, watching massive machines reshape the planet's atmosphere. 3 years ago, this world had been completely dead. No air, no water, and a surface temperature hot enough to melt lead. Now it was becoming humanity's newest garden world. Atmospheric composition is now 60% Earth normal, his chief engineer reported. We should have breathable air across the entire planet within 18 months. The terraforming breakthrough had been born from desperation. Hidden human colonies needed worlds they could live on openly, not just survive in underground bases. So human scientists had developed techniques that could transform dead planets in decades, rather than the millennia such projects usually required. The secret was controlled stellar manipulation. Instead of waiting for natural processes to slowly change a world's climate, human engineers had learned to redirect solar radiation, trigger controlled volcanic activity, and even adjust a planet's orbit. They played with the fundamental forces of nature like other species played with simple tools. The Council's terraforming projects took thousands of years and massive resources. Human terraforming projects took 20 years and nothing but determination. So-young sat in her office in the Vorthak capital city, reviewing intelligence reports that would have shocked the Council leadership if they knew who was reading them. To her alien colleagues, she was simply Zothara, a mid-level administrator in the Council's security department. Her cybernetic modifications and careful surgery made her appear to be a typical Vorthak citizen. But behind her disguise, she was the head of humanity's most extensive spy network. Project Mirror is ready for Phase 2, her assistant reported in the Vorthak language. We have documented evidence of corruption in the Council treasury, illegal weapons deals with non-member species, and deliberate suppression of promising civilizations. So-young smiled with her artificial mandibles. The Council had always presented itself as the guardian of galactic peace and order. But 15 years of careful investigation had revealed the truth. The Council was a corrupt oligarchy, that existed mainly to preserve the power and privilege of its founding members. The evidence she had gathered would eventually destroy the Council's reputation. But timing was everything. Release the information too early, and it would be dismissed as human propaganda. Release it at the right moment and it would trigger a galactic revolution. Continue gathering data, she instructed. We need to be absolutely certain before we act. The intelligence network now had agents in every major council government and most minor ones. They knew about military movements before the orders were given. They had access to classified research that supposedly did not exist. They could predict council policy weeks before it was announced. Knowledge, as humans had learned, was the ultimate weapon. Back on Shadowheart, Tejo met with the elected representatives from across human space. The Shadow Council, as they called themselves, had grown from a small group of exile leaders to a sophisticated government representing millions of people. The question before us today, Tejo began, is whether we are ready to reveal ourselves to the galaxy. The debate that followed showed how much humanity had changed during their exile. Representatives from the ice worlds argued for continued secrecy. Those from the asteroid mining colonies wanted immediate action. The deep space explorers suggested selective disclosure to friendly species. But everyone agreed on one fundamental point. They were no longer the same species that had been exiled 15 years ago. We have become something new, declared the representative from the adapted human colonies. We are not just humans anymore. We are the children of exile, the survivors of abandonment. We have learned to thrive where others fear to go. The question, added the intelligence chief, is not whether we are ready to reveal ourselves. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what we have become. Hyun Woo, now 75 years old and serving as humanity's spiritual advisor, listened to the debate with quiet satisfaction. The young diplomat who had failed to prevent humanity's exile had lived to see his species transform into something the galaxy had never imagined possible. Patience, he counseled the assembly. We have waited 15 years. We can wait a little longer. But when we do reveal ourselves, it will be as equals, not as supplicants begging for readmission. The Council had exiled humanity to protect galactic civilization from human ambition and aggression. Instead, they had created a shadow empire that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. An empire built not on conquest but on adaptation, not on domination but on cooperation, not on tradition but on constant innovation. And soon, very soon, that empire would step out of the shadows and reclaim its place among the stars. The exile was ending, but it would end on humanity's terms, not the Council's. 25 years after humanity's exile, the galaxy faced its first external threat in over 1,000 years. The Kronith arrived without warning, their massive black ships emerging from the void between galaxies like a plague of metal locusts. Dayun watched the invasion unfold from the hidden observation post on the edge of Vorthak space. Her screen showed the destruction of New Century, a council colony world of 50 million people. The planet's defense fleet had lasted exactly 17 minutes against the alien invaders. Council response time? She asked her intelligence officer. The nearest council fleet is still 6 days away. By the time they arrive, there will be nothing left to save. Dayun studied the tactical data streaming across her displays. The Kronith ships used technology completely different from anything in the galaxy. Their weapons punched through standard energy shields like they were paper. Their armor seemed to adapt to whatever attacked it. And their tactics showed a level of coordination that suggested a hive mind intelligence. What about the refugees? She asked. Approximately 2 million civilians managed to evacuate before the planet fell. They're scattered across a dozen nearby systems with nowhere to go. For 25 years, humanity had watched from the shadows as the Council grew complacent and corrupt. Their military doctrine had not evolved in decades. Their ships were designed for ceremony and intimidation, not actual combat. They had become so used to being the only major power in the galaxy that they had forgotten how to fight real wars. Now that weakness would cost billions of lives. Boram stood on the bridge of the Invisible Thunder, one of humanity's newest stealth destroyers. Her ship hung in space just outside the Tyrellian system, watching as Kronith forces prepared to assault another council world. Ma'am, her tactical officer reported, the Kronith fleet consists of 12 heavy cruisers and 46 smaller vessels. The Tyrellian Defense Force has 8 outdated patrol ships. Boram had served in the human underground navy for 15 years. She had fought pirates, explored dangerous space, and helped establish colonies in hostile territory. But she had never faced anything like the Kronith. Orders from command? She asked her communications officer. Maintain observation and do not engage. We are to gather intelligence only. Boram clenched her fists. The Torellians were about to be slaughtered, and her orders were to watch it happen. The Shadow Council's policy was clear. Humanity would not reveal itself until the time was right. But watching innocent people die felt like cowardice. Ma'am, her weapons officer said quietly, our quantum phase torpedoes could destroy that entire Kronith fleet in under 10 minutes. Boram looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These men and women had all volunteered for exile rather than accept surrender. They had spent their entire adult lives protecting human colonies and installations. Asking them to watch a massacre went against everything they believed in. Change of plans, Boram announced. We're going in. Ma'am, that's a direct violation of orders, then court-martial me afterward. If there is an afterward. The invisible thunder dropped its stealth field and accelerated toward the Kronith fleet at maximum speed. Its quantum phase weapons charged as it approached, each torpedo designed to phase through any known defense and detonate inside enemy ships. The first Kronith vessel exploded before the aliens even knew they were under attack. The second and third followed within seconds as Boram's ship danced between the enemy formations, its advanced maneuvering systems allowing it to dodge return fire with impossible grace. What kind of ship is that? Came a transmission from the lead Torellian vessel. I've never seen anything move like that. This is the invisible thunder, Boram replied. We're here to help. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When it was over, the entire Kronith fleet was debris floating in space, and the invisible thunder had not taken a single hit. But more importantly, the entire engagement had been broadcast live across the Galactic communication network before Council sensors could stop it. On Shadowheart, Tejo watched the recording with mixed emotions. Boram had saved millions of lives and proven that human technology could defeat the Kronith. But she had also revealed humanity's existence to the galaxy 15 years earlier than planned. Sir, his aide reported, we're receiving thousands of communication requests from across Council space. Everyone wants to know who the invisible thunder is and where it came from. Tejo sighed. The careful plan for humanity's eventual revelation had just been thrown out the window. But perhaps that was for the best. The galaxy was under attack, and hiding in the shadows while people died was not the human way. Contact the Shadow Council, he ordered. Emergency session. It's time to decide whether we're ready to show ourselves to the galaxy. Subin, now serving as humanity's chief intelligence coordinator, launched Project Mirror within hours of Boram's engagement. Across the galaxy, human agents released carefully prepared information packages to news networks, government officials, and military commanders. The data revealed decades of Council corruption, failed policies, and deliberate suppression of promising species. But more importantly, it provided evidence that the Council's military weakness had made the Kronith invasion possible. The Council spent the last 50 years focusing on politics and profit instead of defense, read one leaked military report. Their fleet doctrine is 300 years out of date. They are completely unprepared for external threats. Yejin, still maintaining her cover on Aquatica Prime, watched as the leaked information spread through the galactic communication networks faster than Council sensors could contain it. Her years of careful cultivation of alien contacts were paying off as respected. Journalists and politicians began asking difficult questions. If this mysterious ship can defeat the Kronith so easily, asked a prominent Zephyrian senator during a live broadcast. Why can't our own fleets do the same? What has the Council been doing with our defense budgets for the last century? The answer, as more leaked documents revealed, was building monuments to themselves instead of modern warships. Within a week of Boram's engagement, 3 more Council worlds had fallen to Kronith attacks. The response from official Council forces had been pathetic in each case. Outdated ships with obsolete weapons had been destroyed before they could even damage the invaders. But in each case, mysterious protector ships had appeared to save civilian populations. Sleek vessels that moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen, using weapons that phased through matter and shields that adapted to any attack. The ships never identified themselves beyond cryptic call signs. The Ghost of Terra, the Exile's Revenge. the shadow's edge. But their message was clear. Someone was protecting the galaxy when the Council could not. Dayun coordinated the defensive operations from her hidden command center, carefully selecting which engagements to fight and which to avoid. Each battle served multiple purposes: save lives, gather intelligence on Kronith technology, and demonstrate human capabilities to the watching galaxy. The Kronith are definitely using some form of hive mind, she reported to the Shadow Council, but their adaptation systems have limits. Our quantum phase weapons can overwhelm their defenses if we hit them fast enough. More importantly, each human victory made the Council look weaker by comparison. Public opinion across the galaxy was shifting as people began to question why mysterious protectors could succeed where the official military failed. The revelation came during the Battle of Kepler Station, when a full Kronith battle fleet attacked one of the galaxy's major trade hubs. The Council sent their newest dreadnought to defend the station, a massive vessel that was supposedly the most powerful ship in the galaxy. It lasted 4 minutes. Then the human fleet arrived. 50 sleek ships materialized out of nowhere, their stealth fields dropping simultaneously as they opened fire on the Kronith forces. The battle was broadcast live across the galaxy as human vessels danced between enemy formations, their impossible maneuvers defying everything other species thought they knew about space combat. When the last Kronith ship exploded, Fleet Admiral Dayun opened a communication channel to the watching galaxy. "This is Admiral Dayun of the Terran Shadow Fleet," she announced. "We are the descendants of the humans you exiled 25 years ago. We have been protecting this galaxy while you slept, and we are no longer hiding. The galaxy would never be the same." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. Half the member worlds were demanding answers about the mysterious human fleet that had saved Kepler Station. The other half were trying to maintain order as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Wu Jin stood outside the council chambers, no longer hiding behind false identities or stealth technology. He wore the formal uniform of the Terran Confederation, a government that claimed to represent the scattered human diaspora. Behind him stood a delegation of 50 humans, each one a living proof that exile had not broken their species. "The council will see you now," announced the Vorthak guard, his 6 arms trembling slightly as he spoke. 25 years ago, humans had been dragged from these same chambers as exiles and outcasts. Now they were returning as equals, perhaps even as superiors. The great hall fell silent as Wu Jin entered. The alien delegates who had once looked down on humanity with contempt now stared with a mixture of fear and amazement. The mysterious protectors who had been saving council worlds from the Kronith were standing before them, and they looked exactly like the primitive species they had exiled. "Honored delegates," Wu Jin began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I am Admiral Wu Jin of the Terran Confederation. I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as the representative of humanity's true government." The Vorthak Prime Minister rose from his golden throne. "You speak of a true government, Admiral. The humans were exiled. Earth was quarantined. How can you claim to represent a government that should not exist?" Wu Jin smiled. "Because exile, as it turns out, was the best thing that ever happened to humanity." Across the chamber, alien delegates began talking among themselves in dozens of languages. The translation systems could barely keep up with the flood of confused and worried conversations. "When you exiled us," Wu Jin continued, "you expected us to retreat to Earth and slowly decline into irrelevance. Instead, you forced us to become something entirely new, something stronger." He activated a holographic display that showed the current map of known space. But instead of the Council's traditional territories, it displayed something that made every alien delegate gasp in shock. "The Terran Confederation currently controls 412 star systems," Wu Jin announced calmly. "Our population exceeds 25 million across 347 settled worlds. We operate the largest fleet in galactic history, maintain the most advanced technology base, and govern more territory than any 3 council members combined." The chamber erupted in alien voices. Some delegates were shouting denials. Others were demanding to know how this was possible. A few were already reaching for their communication devices to contact their home governments. The Zephyrian delegate managed to make herself heard above the chaos. "This is impossible. Our monitoring systems would have detected such expansion. Your monitoring systems detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Wu Jin replied. For 25 years you believed humanity was contained on Earth. In reality, we were building an empire in the spaces between your worlds. Minseo stepped forward from the human delegation. Her appearance shocked many of the alien delegates. Her skin had been modified to handle extreme radiation, her eyes had been enhanced for low-light conditions, and her breathing apparatus allowed her to survive in trace atmospheres. I am Dr. Minseo, Director of Human Adaptation Sciences, she announced. What you see before you is the future of intelligence in this galaxy. While you remained bound to your homeworld environments, we learned to thrive anywhere. She activated another holographic display showing human colonies in environments that should have been completely uninhabitable. Humans living in the crushing gravity of neutron star systems. Communities thriving in the radioactive nebulae around young stars. Cities built in the cold vacuum between galaxies. We no longer see any environment as truly hostile, Minseo explained. If it exists, humans can find a way to live there. This gives us access to resources and strategic positions that you cannot even imagine. Jamin took his turn to address the assembly. I am Chief Engineer Jamin of the Terraform Division. While your terraforming projects take millennia and massive resources, we can transform dead worlds into garden planets in less than 20 years. His hologram showed before and after images of resurrection and dozens of other worlds. Barren rocks had been transformed into lush, living planets using techniques that seemed to border on magic. We have learned to manipulate stellar radiation, adjust planetary orbits, and trigger controlled geological processes, he explained. We don't just adapt to worlds, we improve them. The council chamber was now in complete chaos. Delegates were shouting questions, demanding explanations, and trying to contact their governments. Many were beginning to realize that everything they thought they knew about the balance of galactic power was wrong. So Young stepped forward, and her appearance caused an even greater shock. Several Vorthak delegates recognized her as Zothara, the mid-level administrator they had worked with for years. I am Intelligence Director So Young, she announced, removing the cybernetic disguises that had hidden her human features. For 15 years I have worked in your security departments, analyzed your military capabilities, and documented your government's activities. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. If humans could infiltrate the Council's own security apparatus, what else might they have penetrated? We know about your corruption, So Young continued calmly. We have evidence of illegal weapons deals, embezzled funds, and the deliberate suppression of promising species. We know about your military weaknesses, your political divisions, and your strategic vulnerabilities. She paused to let that sink in before delivering the final blow. We also know that the Kronith invasion was predicted by your own analysts 3 years ago, and that their warnings were ignored because responding would have been expensive. The Vorthak Prime Minister was no longer looking arrogant. Like the rest of the Council, he was beginning to understand that humanity had not just survived their exile. They had used it to become the dominant power in the galaxy. What do you want? He asked quietly. Wu Jin looked around the chamber at the faces of the delegates who had once condemned his species. Some showed fear, others anger, and a few showed what might have been respect. We want to offer you a choice, he said. You can continue trying to maintain the old order while the Kronith destroy world after world. Or you can accept that the galaxy has changed and work with us to build something better. The Terran Confederation is not interested in conquest or revenge, he continued. We are offering partnership to any species willing to embrace progress over tradition, merit over privilege, and cooperation over hierarchy. A younger delegate from the Aquatic Federation raised a tentacle. What about the worlds that choose not to join your confederation? They remain free to govern themselves as they see fit, Wu Jin replied. But they also remain responsible for their own defense against the Kronith. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the council chambers. Emergency lights flashed as the communication systems activated with an urgent message. Kronith fleet approaching the capital system. All available ships move to intercept. Through the great windows of the chamber, the delegates could see the Council's home fleet moving to defensive positions. Massive dreadnoughts that had been symbols of galactic power for centuries were preparing for battle. Your fleet will not be enough, Wu Jin said quietly. The Kronith are sending their largest force yet. 200 ships, including vessels we have never seen before. Then help us, shouted the crystalline collective delegate. If you are truly here to protect the galaxy, help us defend our capital. Wu Jin nodded to his aide, who activated his communication device. Admiral Dayun, this is Confederation Command. You are authorized to engage. Outside the windows, space seemed to shimmer as hundreds of human ships dropped their stealth fields. The hidden fleet that had been waiting in the shadows suddenly revealed itself, their sleek forms dwarfing even the Council's largest vessels. The Terran Confederation will defend this system, Wu Jin announced. Not because we owe you anything, but because protecting innocent lives is what we do. As the human fleet moved to intercept the approaching Kronith forces, the Council delegates finally understood what their exile had really accomplished. They had not contained humanity's ambition, they had freed it from all constraints. And now that unleashed potential was the only thing standing between civilization and destruction.